Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I would also like to welcome you and to thank the organizers for the invitation. For the next 10 minutes, I will try to brief you on the most important international and regional developments in the environmental arena. Starting with the ballast water management, Switzerland was the most recent country to ratify the convention last September. Now we need 4.62 more of the world tonnage in order the convention to come into force. Last week, during MEPC 66, 4 more systems were granted with basic approvals and 2 more systems with final approval. This table represents the implementation schedule for the discharge standards as has been adjusted by the IMO Assembly last December. Further, on MEPC 66, there were some very interesting papers that have been considered last week. One from Germany describing ballast water sampling methods. 2 papers from India providing a concept of port-based ballast water treatment boats as an alternative to onboard installation of treatment systems. Of course, there was a concern expressed regarding the need for more robust and transparent G8 guidelines for the testing of the treatment systems, and also draft guidelines regarding the use of ballast water treatment systems during stripping operations. Unfortunately, MEPC 66, the committee, did not reach to any agreement on these proposals, and these issues will be further discussed at the next session. Moving now to the other side of the Atlantic, the ballast water management requirements in the United States are more complex. For vessels trading in the U.S. waters, they need to comply with U.S. Coast Guard ballast water regulations, EPA vessel general permit, and individual state requirements, with California imposing the most stringent. This table there represents the U.S. Coast Guard and EPA ballast water discharge standards implementation schedule. Please note that we have already seen the first extension letters issued by the U.S. Coast Guard to extend the application to 1st January 2016 for the new vessels and this category there that would have to comply at the first dry docking after January 2014. The sole basis in all these extension letters is that it is the fact that still there is no type-approved ballast water treatment system from the U.S. Coast Guard. Moving to California, California has 2 levels of discharge standards, the interim and the final. This table there represents the implementation schedule for the interim standards, while the final standards are 0 detectable living organisms and will be effective after the 1st January 2020. Now, regarding the Hong Kong Convention, only Norway has officially ratified. We're expecting France to do it within the next 2 months. Currently, IMO is working on the developing of threshold values for the inventory of hazardous materials. However, on the other hand, the European Union has already put in force the ship recycling regulations. According to this, a verified inventory of hazardous materials and a statement of compliance has to be issued for all vessels, and in particular for EU-flagged new ships not later than 31st of December 2018, while for the remaining vessels not later than 31st of December 2020. Now, moving to the energy efficiency for ships and the EDI. As you know, in order to comply with the EDI requirement, you have to calculate the attained EDI by using this formula, and then to compare with the required EDI as it derives from the reference lines. Last week, we had some amendments in the formula. We have the introduction of correction factors for ro-ro cargo ships, ro-ro passenger ships, and general cargo ships. Also, a new correction factor for general cargo ships equipped with cranes and cargo gears in order to compensate for the loss of deadweight. And ITTC procedures have to be followed for sea trials corrections, while ISO 50016 is the final stage of the revision. We have seen the draft text. Please note that a software called STIMO has, for speed trials correction, as per ITTC procedures, has been accepted by IMO, and it has been officially released. You can download STIMO by following this link, and you can carry out independently your speed trials corrections for your new building vessels. Further, on the EDI, last week, amendments have been adopted to extend the application to vehicle carriers, LNG carriers, cruise passenger ships having non-conventional propulsion, and ro-ro cargo and ro-ro passenger ships. Also, the reference lines have been constructed. You can use this table with this formula in order to calculate the required EDI. Further, amendments have been adopted to exempt the application of EDI to cargo ships with ice-breaking capacity, platforms and drilling rings, and ships not propelled by mechanical means. Further, on measures to enhancing energy efficiency, and in particular on monitoring and reporting of fuel consumption, please note that last week the three-phase approach has been considered. This includes the data collection and analysis phase, the pilot phase, and the full implementation with inclusion of a rating system. However, at this point of time, it has been agreed that further work has to be carried on the first phase only, the data collection system for fuel consumption, and to report at the next MEPC 67 in October for consideration. On the other hand, European Union has already published a proposal for monitoring, reporting, and verification of CO2 emissions from ships. If approved by the European Council and the Parliament, it will enter into force on 1st July 2015. This sketch there represents how it works. Actually, the ship operator has to develop a monitoring plan and to submit it to the verifier not later than 31st of August 2017. By 1st January 2018, you have to start monitoring your emissions. At the end of this year, you have to report the emissions to the European Committee and to the flag state. And at the end of this process, a document of compliance will be issued for the vessels. Please note that there are already some proposals to amend the proposed regulations. However, I will skip this slide as it will be covered from Mr. Skylakakis later on. Now, moving to the air emissions from ships. Last week, it was also agreed that Tier 3 NOx emissions limits will not be postponed until 2021 and will be applicable from 1st January 2016. However, there is a provision for excluding small yachts and ships with combined propulsion power not less than 750 kilowatts. As you know, we have 4 SOx emission control areas and 2 NOx emissions control areas. It is anticipated that this year a proposal will be submitted to IMO in order the Baltic Sea to be also assigned as a NOx emission control area. And regarding the sulfur content of fuels, we have in ECAS 0.1% from 1st January 2015, and the global 0.5% sulfur cap into force in 2020 or 2025, depending on an availability review in 2015 and not in 2018. Again, European Union has already put in force a directive which requires 0.5% sulfur limit in all EU waters from 2020, regardless of the results of the IMO review. Further, last week we had some amendments in Marpol regarding the standard specification for seaboard incineration installed on passenger ships, amendments to Annex 1 BCH and IBC code for mandatory carriage requirements of stability instruments on oil and chemical tankers. There was a proposal for the boiler economizer goes down water to be treated as operational waste, and in order to be able to be discharged overboard under some specific conditions, not more than 12 nautical miles from the nearest land, and utilizing a soot collecting tank for decanting. Concerns have been raised regarding the quality of bunker fuels, and there is a proposal for development of measures to mandate the control of bunker fuel quality supply that will be discussed at the next MEPC. And also there was a proposal to amend Regulation 16 of Marpol Annex 6 in order a ship to be able to operate a waste-to-energy system as an alternative to incineration. Moving to the Polar Code, the draft text was agreed by the Ship Design and Construction last January. As you may know, the draft Polar Code includes safety and pollution prevention measures for ships operating in defined waters of Antarctic and Arctic, and it is anticipated that it will be adopted at MEPC 68 in May 2015 and enter into force as early as 1st November 2016. And finally, regarding the noise from commercial shipping, it has been recognized that propeller cavitation and machinery are the primary sources from noise. The draft guidelines have been developed. However, it is recognized that there are gaps in knowledge at this point of time, and more research is needed. Personally, I do not expect a mandatory regulation earlier than 2020. And this concludes my presentation. Thank you very much.